In Michigan, one mistake and you could be in literally hell. Let us explain. One moment people have homes and the next, they are stuck in a beat-down RV trying everything to survive. You know what's worse? Michigan wants to kill these people.
As the heat persists across West Michigan, those experiencing homelessness aren't getting a break from it.
Apart from the brutal heat, in Michigan, winters are brutal. Temperatures drop below zero, and that's nothing compared to icy sharp winds off the Great Lakes that cut through everything. And thousands of people are living in vehicles, trying to survive conditions that want to kill them off. It's easy to say that it's not a big problem, because just over 33,000 people are experiencing homelessness across the state. That number doesn't seem like much, but what if we told you that the unsheltered numbers have doubled in some cities since 2015? Vehicle dwelling usage rose from 10% before the pandemic to 40 to 50% now in urban areas. RVs, vans, and cars become metal boxes that become coffins when carbon monoxide builds up or temperatures plunge too low. 2 children died in February 2025 of carbon monoxide poisoning. Their family lived in a van in a casino parking lot because they had nowhere else to go. That tragedy happened in Detroit, but the crisis is everywhere, and in 10 cities across Michigan, it's much worse. In those places, vehicle homelessness has exploded into an emergency. And when you see what's happening in each location, you'll understand why this is becoming Michigan's most urgent humanitarian disaster. Number 10. Jackson, the prison pipeline to homelessness. Let's start with Jackson. Population around 33,000, home to multiple correctional facilities, and a homeless population between 200 and 300 people that jumped 10% in 2024. 30% of Jackson's homeless live in vehicles. That's not the highest percentage in Michigan, but it's significant because of why they're there. Jackson releases prisoners constantly. People who served their sentences, paid their debt to society, got bus fare and a referral sheet at 2 in the morning. No housing, no job, and often no identification, released into a city that has no infrastructure to catch them. Residents in Action, a local organization, reports increasing numbers of families living in cars, not just released prisoners, families, parents with kids, working people who couldn't afford Jackson's rising rents. And Jackson faces a unique new threat. Michigan Department of Transportation, MDOT, proposed new rules in 2025, banning extended vehicle parking in rest areas and carpool lots. Those rules hit highway parkers hard. Places where people in Jackson have been parking legally become illegal overnight. So someone released from prison tries to stabilize. Find a rest area where they can sleep in their cars safely, park legally, stay out of trouble. Then MDOT rules eliminate that option. They're back to street parking. Constant movement, enforcement that never stops. Jackson's crisis is about transitions. People leaving institutions without support. The city doesn't have the resources to help them, doesn't have the shelter beds, the transitional housing, and so vehicles become the default. The only option between prison and complete street homelessness. Winter makes everything worse. Jackson gets lake effect snow. Temperatures well below freezing for months. A car's engine provides heat, but only if it runs, and only if there's gas. People burn through whatever money they have just staying warm enough to survive until morning. The prison pipeline feeds Jackson's vehicle homelessness constantly. Every release adds potential new vehicle dwellers. Every person who can't find housing, can't find work, can't reconnect with family. They end up in cars and RVs scattered across the city. But Jackson's struggles with re-entry look manageable compared to what happens when tourism destroys affordability. Number 9. Muskegon. Tourism boom pricing out locals. Muskegon sits on Lake Michigan's shore. It has beautiful beaches and a charming downtown. It is the summer destination for tourists across the Midwest, and approximately 250 people experiencing homelessness, with 40% unsheltered in RVs. That's the highest vehicle dwelling percentage of any Michigan city will cover, higher than Detroit, higher than Grand Rapids. In Muskegon, living in a vehicle isn't an edge case. It's the most common form of homelessness. Why? Seasonal tourism. In the summer months, Muskegon's population swells. Vacationers rent properties, and so short-term rentals dominate the housing market. Hotels fill. Campgrounds pack. Landlords realize they can make more money renting to tourists weekly than to locals yearly. So, they convert long-term rentals to vacation properties. Local workers, the people who keep Muskegon running, get priced out. A one-bedroom that rented for $800 annually becomes a vacation rental at $1,500 weekly. The math stops working for anyone making local wages. Then add factory layoffs. Muskegon's manufacturing sector shed jobs in 2023 and 2024. Plants that employed hundreds cut shifts and reduced their workforce. Some closed entirely. Workers who'd been stable suddenly had no income and rent they couldn't afford. RVs cluster near beaches. Older models that are barely functional. People park as close to the tourist areas as possible because that's where services are, where bathrooms exist, where they can blend in slightly during busy seasons. Balance of State Continuum of Care data shows outreach to mobile unhoused populations doubled in Muskegon. Not because services improved, because the problem exploded. Outreach teams can't keep up with the growth. Winter is cruel there. Lake effect snow buries vehicles. Temperatures drop. The beaches that look idyllic in summer become frozen wastelands. RVs that might survive mild climates fail in Muskegon winters. Pipes freeze. Propane runs out. People huddle under every blanket they own, burning through resources just to avoid hypothermia. And when summer returns, tourists arrive to enjoy the beauty, never seeing the RVs tucked in parking lots. Never recognizing that local workers serving them meals and cleaning their rentals might be living in vehicles because tourism made housing unaffordable. Muskegon proves that economic success doesn't benefit everyone. Tourism brings money, but that money flows to property owners and businesses. Workers get priced out, end up in vehicles, survive however they can. Well, at least Muskegon's crisis is somewhat seasonal. The next city hides its crisis behind natural beauty. Number 8. Traverse City, rural appeal hiding vehicle crisis. Traverse City, northern Michigan, the cherry capital of the world. It has stunning landscapes, wealthy retirees, vacation homes, and between 150 and 200 people experiencing homelessness, with 50% unsheltered in RVs. Half of Traverse City's homeless population lives in vehicles. That percentage rivals Muskegon's, but Traverse City's crisis is more hidden and spread out and so harder to see. The region saw a 56% jump in homelessness between 2021 and 2022. That surge carried into 2025 without slowing. Yet most visitors never notice because vehicle dwellers scatter across rural areas, state parks, forest roads, and highway pull-offs. Places where one RV doesn't look concerning. This is how rural areas make this crisis invisible. Imagine this. Someone parks an RV in a state park. It looks like camping, and it looks like it is recreational. People see it and think the family is having fun. Nobody realizes that the family has been in that spot for 3 months and that they're not vacationing but just trying to survive. Then suddenly, they no longer couldn't. 2025 brought encampment closures. State authorities cleared areas where people had established semi-permanent camps. Dozens got displaced and moved to highways, which unsurprisingly scattered them further into isolation and made them even harder for outreach services to reach. Tourism drives Traverse City's economy. Wealthy visitors buy properties. Second homes sit empty 9 months yearly, while local workers can't afford year-round rentals. The disconnect is staggering. $1-million vacation homes next to service workers living in vans. The cold is deadly there. Northern Michigan winters are severe, long, relentless, and guess what? Traverse City recorded temperatures below -10 for extended periods in recent winters. An RV or van in those temperatures becomes a test of survival. Run the heater constantly and burn through propane in days, or ration, heat, and risk freezing. Your choice. People make impossible choices, burn propane to stay warm but have no money for food, or save money for food and endure a cold that causes frostbite. Both options lead to a crisis, just different types. And because Traverse City's vehicle homelessness is so dispersed, services can't reach people effectively. Outreach teams drive forest roads looking for scattered RVs. Sometimes they find people, but most times they don't. Rural isolation means people fall through cracks without anyone noticing until it's too late. The beauty that attracts tourists makes vehicle dwelling possible, deadly and invisible to people who could help. Traverse City's crisis hides in plain sight, but rural hiding places at least offer some peace. The next city faces industrial collapse. Number 7. Saginaw, industrial decay and opioid crisis. In Saginaw County, approximately 400 people are experiencing homelessness, and 20 to 25% are living in vehicles. It could get worse because Saginaw's economy hasn't recovered from industrial collapse. Manufacturing jobs that sustained Saginaw for generations disappeared as factories closed and plants shuttered. The economic base that supported the city evaporated, and what remained was poverty, unemployment, and desperation. Then the opioid crisis hit. Saginaw became one of Michigan's hotspots for addiction, prescription pills flooding communities, heroin when pills became too expensive, fentanyl killing people left and right. The combination of economic devastation and addiction created a homelessness crisis that overwhelms local resources. RVs park in lots, near shuttered plants. Industrial areas where nobody works anymore, where security is minimal, where people can exist without immediate harassment. The abandoned infrastructure of Saginaw's industrial past becomes shelter for people the economy abandoned. Families living in vehicles near factories their grandparents worked in. Generational economic trauma became physical. The buildings where previous generations lived, middle-class lives now serve as landmarks for their descendants living in cars. Michigan's State Action Plan targets Northeast Michigan with 100 new affordable housing units. That's a start, but 100 units for a region where thousands need housing barely scratches the surface. It's acknowledging the crisis exists, but not really solving it. Saginaw's vehicle dwellers face unique challenges. The opioid epidemic means many are struggling with addiction while homeless. Treating addiction requires stability, requires consistent medical care, requires support systems. Living in an RV while battling addiction makes recovery nearly impossible. And the stigma compounds everything. People see someone living in a vehicle near abandoned factories and assume addiction caused their homelessness. Sometimes it did. Often it didn't. Economic collapse pushed them into vehicles. Addiction came later. The stress and trauma of homelessness led to substance use as a coping mechanism. Saginaw's crisis is about industrial death. Cities built around manufacturing that vanished. Workers trained for jobs that no longer exist, communities that haven't found new economic models, and people falling through every gap. But at least Saginaw's industrial decline happened gradually. The next city faced a different kind of collapse. Number 6. Flint. Water crisis fallout continues. In Flint, Michigan, everybody is familiar with one story, and that's the water crisis story. Lead poisoning, government failure, and a city betrayed by those who should serve it. What people don't talk about as much is how that crisis continues destroying lives years later. Genesee County reports approximately 800 people experiencing homelessness. That's a per capita high. One of the highest rates in the state relative to population. 25% live in vehicles. The water crisis didn't just poison water. It poisoned trust. It destroyed property values. It drove people away who could afford to leave. It trapped people who couldn't. And it created economic devastation that continues spiraling. Properties became worthless. Who wants to buy a house in a city where the water system tried to kill residents? Landlords abandoned buildings. Foreclosures spiked. The housing stock that remained deteriorated. Affordable housing evaporated. RV encampments line I-75, visible from the highway. Clusters of vehicles where people exist because Flint has limited services, forcing car reliance. The city's infrastructure collapsed during the water crisis. Services never fully recovered. What remains is inadequate for the need. Flint's coalition reports a 15% year-over-year increase in family vehicle homelessness. Not individuals, families, parents with children, living in cars and RVs because Flint's housing market stopped functioning. The trauma compounds. People who survived lead exposure are now surviving homelessness. Kids who were poisoned growing up now face housing insecurity as young adults. Generational crisis stacking on generational crisis. And winter makes Flint deadly. The same homes with frozen pipes during the water crisis are the same areas where people in vehicles freeze. Limited access to warming centers. Shelters that fill immediately. Streets where RVs cluster offer no protection from Michigan winter. Flint is already a mess. Then add the post-industrial collapse, and the auto industry jobs disappeared decades ago. The water crisis was the final blow to a city already struggling. What's left is a population dealing with multiple overlapping crises simultaneously. Lead exposure, economic collapse, housing shortage, addiction, mental health, all intersecting. Vehicle dwelling becomes a survival strategy in a city where every other support system fails. RVs are a shelter when buildings are uninhabitable, when trust in government is shattered, when affordable housing is a memory. Flint proves that single disasters create lasting homelessness. The water crisis ended years ago. The fallout continues destroying lives today, and will continue for years more. Flint's crisis came from government failure. The next city is failing itself. Number 5. Lansing, state capital failing its own. Welcome to Lansing, Michigan's capital, where the state government operates, where policies about homelessness get written, and where 300 to 400 people experience homelessness, with vehicles dwelling up 20%. The irony is brutal. Lawmakers create homelessness policy while stepping over homeless constituents. State officials discuss the housing crisis while their own capital city struggles to house residents. The disconnect is complete. Lansing planned pod villages, small modular housing units to provide emergency shelter. Those plans got delayed, and delayed again. Meanwhile, RV clusters appeared in parks. Vehicle dwelling surged. People waited for help that kept getting postponed. Then MDOT rules threatened the limited parking options people had. Rest area bans, carpool lot restrictions. The state government is making it harder for people in vehicles to survive in the state capital. Advocates pushed for the right to rest bills, legislation protecting people's ability to exist in public spaces, acknowledging that criminalizing homelessness doesn't end it, just makes it harder to survive. Those bills face resistance from the same legislators who live in Lansing and see the crisis daily. The 20% increase in vehicle dwelling happened because shelters couldn't absorb everyone, because pod villages didn't materialize fast enough, because affordable housing construction didn't keep pace with need. All failures of policy, all happening in the city where policy is made. Lansing's vehicle dwellers park wherever enforcement is lightest. Industrial areas, church parking lots, where congregations allow overnight parking. Streets in neighborhoods too busy with their own problems to report vehicles. Winter in Lansing is harsh. The capital doesn't offer special protections. State employees in heated offices pass RVs on their commute. Some probably don't notice. Some notice and look away. Some notice and wonder why the state they work for can't solve this. That's the question. Why can't the state capital house its residents? Why can't the place where laws are written provide basic shelter? Vehicle homelessness in Lansing is embarrassing for the state government. It's visible proof that policy isn't working. Those grand plans don't translate to housing. That people fall through gaps while lawmakers debate. Still, Lansing has the attention of policymakers nearby. The next city declared a crisis and still can't keep up. Number 4. Kalamazoo. Housing Crisis Declaration. Kalamazoo hit a 5-year high in 2024. Approximately 450 homelessness, 30% unsheltered in vehicles, and the city officially declared a housing crisis. Declaring a crisis is acknowledging reality and admitting the problem is too big to ignore, that standard responses aren't working, that emergency measures are needed. Kalamazoo made that declaration, then kept struggling to respond effectively. Rents increased 15% since 2023 alone, 1 year and a 15% jump. This is bad, but when you then realize that wages didn't increase 15%, you'll see that it's far worse than you think. The gap between housing costs and income widened so fast that it pushed working families into vehicles. We are talking about working families, people trying to make ends meet against all odds, not unemployed people, not people with addiction issues. Families where both parents work but combined income doesn't cover rent. Teachers, retail workers, restaurant staff. The people who make Kalamazoo function couldn't afford to live there. County commissioners noted students and tent dwellers transitioning to cars in winter. That transition is a survival strategy. The tents offer no protection from Michigan winter. Vehicles at least have heaters and run engines for warmth. Provide some barrier against cold. But vehicles aren't housing. They should be an emergency shelter where people try surviving until something better appears, but that something better rarely comes. Kalamazoo's shelters overflow constantly. Beds fill every night, wait lists extend for weeks. The good thing is, emergency overflow spaces open during extreme cold, but they close when temperatures moderate slightly. People shuffle between inadequate options without ever getting stable. MDOT-impacted parking lots became a refuge. Spaces where enforcement was unclear, where people could park overnight without immediate citation. The new rest area bans eliminated those spaces, pushed people back to local streets, back to constant movement. The Housing Crisis Declaration should have triggered an emergency response, state resources, federal aid, rapid housing construction. Instead, it triggered meetings, reports, committees studying the problem. More research into causes everyone already understands. Meanwhile, 30% of Kalamazoo's homeless live in vehicles, survive Michigan winter in cars and RVs, wait for help that's declared but not delivered. The declaration acknowledged the crisis. It didn't solve it. Kalamazoo's struggles are at least recent. The next city has faced this longer. Number 3. Ann Arbor, university town pricing out workers. Ann Arbor, home to University of Michigan, prestigious institution, wealthy students, expensive housing, and between 500 and 600 people experiencing homelessness in Washtenaw County, with 15 to 20% in vehicles. Here's what's crazy. To afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Ann Arbor, you need to make $30.90 per hour. That's over $64,000 annually. A full-time job at minimum wage, you're $30,000 short. University-driven demand makes housing impossible. Students from wealthy families compete for apartments. International students paying full tuition also join in that competition. That competition drives prices to levels working people can't match. The people who serve food to students, who cleans university buildings, who staff local businesses supporting the university economy. They can't afford to live in Ann Arbor, so they commute from surrounding areas, or they live in vehicles. 2024 saw a 10% rise in unsheltered homelessness. The county declared it a public health crisis. That declaration came with the same problem as Kalamazoo's: acknowledgement without adequate response. Ann Arbor focuses on eviction prevention, programs helping people avoid losing housing in the first place. That's valuable. It keeps some people stable, but it does nothing for mobile unhoused, for people already in vehicles. Those gaps persist despite programs. Students might walk past RVs near campus without recognizing them as homes. The university's wealth creates such stark contrast: brand new buildings, state-of-the-art facilities, manicured lawns, and 2 blocks away, someone's living in a minivan. Highway areas near Ann Arbor see clusters of vehicles, not downtown, where enforcement is aggressive, but surrounding areas where people can access Ann Arbor for work while parking somewhere cheaper. The city exports its homelessness to neighboring communities. And winter doesn't care about university prestige, doesn't care about academic reputation. Cold kills equally. Someone in an RV near Ann Arbor faces the same survival challenge as someone in Flint, just with the added insult of being near a billion-dollar institution. The Public Health Crisis Declaration should matter. The university should feel responsibility for affordable housing, since university demand drives unaffordability. Instead, the crisis continues to expand, and Ann Arbor's problems remain about local economics, but for the next city? There is an even greater threat of regional housing collapse. Number 2. Grand Rapids, most competitive rental market. Grand Rapids ranks number 3 nationally for most competitive rental markets. Think about that. In the entire United States, only 2 cities have tighter, more competitive, more brutal rental markets than Grand Rapids. 2024 counts showed 403 people experiencing homelessness. That's a 27% jump in 1 year. From 2 years prior, it's a 35% increase. The crisis is accelerating, not stabilizing. Roughly 25% are unsheltered, living in vehicles or encampments. West Michigan needs over 10,000 affordable housing units to meet demand. 10,000. That's not a gap, that's a chasm. Community action agencies report outreach to RV clusters has doubled since 2023. Not because they added resources, because the population needing help doubled. Supply of help stayed constant while demand exploded. Vehicle dwelling concentrates along industrial corridors, areas where manufacturing used to thrive, where factories employed thousands. Now those industrial zones house RVs, workers' descendants living in vehicles near buildings where grandparents earned middle-class wages. The rental competition is insane. Apartments get multiple applications within hours of listing. Landlords can demand proof of income 3 times monthly rent, can require perfect credit, can charge whatever they want because demand is endless. Working people can't compete. A family making $50,000 annually applies for an apartment asking $1,800 monthly. Needs to prove they earn $5,400 monthly. They're short. Application denied. Try the next place. Same result. Eventually, they stop trying. Grand Rapids is growing. The population is increasing and jobs are being created, but housing construction can't keep pace or won't. Developers build luxury apartments targeting high-income renters. Nothing for the working class. The gap widens while construction continues building for the wrong income levels. Churches allow RV parking. Some businesses don't enforce removal. Small acts of mercy in a system designed to punish poverty. But those spaces are temporary, fragile, can disappear with one complaint or policy change. The 27% annual increase suggests the crisis is getting worse fast. Each year adds more people. Each year services fall further behind. Each year the housing gap grows larger. Grand Rapids is watching homelessness accelerate in real time without adequate response. But even Grand Rapids' staggering increases pale compared to what's happening in Michigan's largest city. Number 1. Detroit. Carbon monoxide tragedy. Detroit. What a mess. Between 1,500 and 2,000 people are experiencing homelessness. The unsheltered population doubled from 151 in 2015 to 305 in 2024. But let's start with February 10, 2025. In Greektown Casino parking lot, Erica Whipple and her kids lived in a van. Then, suddenly, one morning, 2 children, 3-year-old Javian Harper and 9-year-old Monica Harper, didn't wake up. Their mom, Erica, fought to save them. She gave CPR and called for help. Fortunately, help came and paramedics transported them. It turned out that they had carbon monoxide poisoning. They arrived at the hospital, but it was too late. The carbon monoxide had already destroyed their oxygen carrying capacity, and they died. Erica told reporters she'd lost housing, was sleeping in the van with her kids, trying to figure out next steps, trying to keep them safe, trying to survive. The van's engine provided heat and also killed her children. That's Detroit's crisis. A mother doing everything possible, still losing her children because vehicle dwelling is deadly, because cars aren't housing, because families end up in situations where keeping warm becomes fatal. Detroit's response was immediate. Detroit announced a 7-point plan. The city doubled the drop in beds from 110 to 220 within 90 days. Police precincts became temporary havens. 25 people got help in the first 2 weeks through precinct outreach. But here's the scale problem. Detroit has 455 children experiencing homelessness, a record high up from 312 the prior year. School-age unsheltered kids tripled in 3 years, 48 to 142. Triple. The Coordinated Access Model System, CAM, tracks people seeking help. 12,530 callers in 2024. 24% were literally homeless, no shelter, many in vehicles. Rent increases accelerated the crisis. 2-bedroom apartments saw 23% hikes. Rental stock increased 51% since 2021, but prices rose faster than supply. More apartments didn't mean affordable apartments. Detroit's homelessness increased 16% overall in 2024. Family homelessness jumped 35%. Not individuals, families, parents with children. The demographics of homelessness shifting toward families reflects economic pressure on working people. Vehicle dwelling offers families some advantages. Stay together, keep possessions, maintain some autonomy. But it's deadly. Carbon monoxide builds up in closed vehicles. Generators fail. Heaters malfunction. People die trying to stay warm. After the Greektown tragedy, Detroit added resources. But resources for 200 people don't help when 2,000 need housing. The gap is too large. The response, while genuine, can't match the scale of need. Winter continues. More families live in vehicles. More parents try keeping kids warm. More people face the same risks that killed Javian and Monica. The tragedy should have been a turning point. Instead, it's a preview of what could keep happening. Detroit's crisis is Michigan's crisis concentrated. Post-industrial collapse, poverty, economic inequality, housing unaffordability, all converging in the state's largest city. What happens in Detroit previews what's coming for smaller cities. The carbon monoxide deaths aren't unique, they're just the ones that made headlines. How many people have died in vehicles that didn't get reported? How many close calls happen nightly? How many families are one malfunction away from tragedy? Detroit represents everything wrong with how America treats homelessness. We know it's dangerous. We know vehicles aren't housing. We know children are at risk. And we respond with drop-in beds and 7-point plans that can't possibly house everyone who needs it. So that's Michigan's RV homelessness crisis. This crisis is solvable. Other communities proved it. Housing First initiatives work. Rapid rehousing programs succeed. Permanent supportive housing reduces chronic homelessness. The solutions exist. Michigan chose enforcement over housing, chose sweeps over services, chose to criminalize poverty instead of ending it. And 2 children died in a van because their family had nowhere else to go. This is real. The victims didn't wish for it, and unfortunately, there's more to come. To stay informed, like this video, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications for more videos like this.